I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence and education just for a mini talk, just about less than 10 minutes or so. And it's a concept that keeps coming up, and I thought it was worth a few minutes. I kind of had some time in between some of the other sessions to talk about the role of artificial intelligence in education and training in L&D, and see, kind of go through a little bit of the history and some other things. AI it's a term that gets kind of tossed around a lot, and I think a lot of times in public view, it's kind of considered the same as machine learning, and I don't view it as being the same as machine learning. And then, to me, machine learning is a subcategory of AI that really you want AI. It does mean a lot of things, but that it can, if something behaves intelligently, that you probably have enough of what you need. And there are AI techniques, meaning you can take some parts of artificial intelligence. I'll give an example in a minute, and build it in. We're not necessarily looking for, a full human or a full learning model, or learning, something that can necessarily learn in the conventional ways. We're looking for really what can we accomplish using these techniques. And I think it's a little bit different. My own background was in this area way back in the late 80s, early 90s. I did my PhD in essentially in artificial intelligence in education. My PhD advisor was a guy named Roger Schenk, whose name still floats around a little bit. And Roger had been an artificial intelligence researcher at Yale and created a lab at Northwestern University, which brought together education, cognitive psychology, and computer science and AI all under one roof. And that's the root of a lot of this for me. And I think why I like to talk about it is AI kind of is, been a big thing these days. Once again, so in education and training, again, what do we do with it? And I'll give some more examples. It's not that it has to be anything and everything. I mentioned in my earlier talk that analytics use some AI components, but again, we have to kind of think about it. To me, the best place for AI is to make sure that we're helping the experience. And that's where I kind of see these AI coaches and these other, the uses of data and big data and personalized data both. I think personalized data may be more so. It's lots of data, but look at it from at the localized level. So kind of walk through so I'm calling it a semi-personal history of AI in education, or relevant things. Start back in 1966. You could start back in other ways before that with something called ELIZA, which was a psychologist created by Joseph Weizenbaum, and it basically was a little psychotherapist program, and it looked like this. And it would ask you questions, and it would say things that were sort of vague, and it simulated a conversation with you. And so it would ask you, would say, I'm having a problem, and it would say, do you think this has something to do with your mother? And that may or may not be true, but it would get you talking things. So it wasn't really intelligent in the sense, but it did feel like a realistic conversation. And that was one of the interesting things, about it. In the 1970s, you started to see more intelligent tutoring systems. You saw some different kinds of approaches to AI in education and trying to build smart models that helped you through things. We saw expert systems, which would build a content model of an area, often in medicine, and try to help do a diagnosis. So there lots of interesting research was done in these years, and it all kind of reached a certain point of being helpful, but maybe not being mainstream. 91, I'm going to list training simulations using AI. I'm going to give you an example of that came out of the research lab where I was, and my own contribution to the corporate learning world in 91. So I will show a screen from that in just a minute. So let's take a look at that. This is a screen from what was considered the early days of learn by doing simulations, and it was for Boston Chicken, which was it's now Boston Market. It's a semi-fast food chain in the U.S. They don't like to call themselves fast food. At least they didn't when I knew them. It's rotisserie chicken. It's supposed to be sort of home-cooked food, homey food that's done in a reasonably quickly, and that's sort of a concept that's much more common now than it was back in 1991. So what I ended up doing for Boston Chicken, and really what I was tasked with was, as a graduate student at the time, was here's a client that we can, who wants to talk with us, go talk with them, see if you can come up with some way to apply simulations in the corporate world. It was really that vague. That's all we were. what we ended up doing was talking. I went actually to Boston Chicken training school. I spent about 2 weeks out there with them, learning about the business, learning what trainees would learn. And what came out as the sort of the best fit was a training system for cashiers. And it looked like this. So they would run this. This is actually what their cash register looked like on the right-hand side of the screen. This was the keyboard that they had. And so in the training system, and I don't have a full demo, I only have this one screen, and it's, remarkable that it survived all these years. I feel like I had to, dig it out of the archives. So this was a cashier training for Boston Chicken. What they would do was a customer would come up. The customer would come up in video, actually in this white area, which got reused for a few different things. Bottom left of the screen. Customer would say, I'm ordering, I'd like a half chicken with sides. And you could do several things. You could ask questions. Now what? So what do I do next? How do I do that and why? So there's a questions you could ask at any time. So there was some coaching guidance for you. There were some buttons over here, tell the customer the amount due, give customer change. It kind of pushed you through the scenario when you needed information. But mostly what you did was use the cash register to ring up the order. And this was not a trivial thing. The cash register was designed to be efficient for this job. It's not such a general cash register. And it takes some effort. Someone orders a half chicken with sides, and they would actually order, I'll have a half chicken with broccoli and cranberry walnut relish. That was actually a real order that you might place. And I had to know to ring that up as a half chicken with sides. I could not ring that up as a half chicken and as a side order of cranberry walnut relish, and I guess it would really be coleslaw rather than broccoli. So I could not do that. That wouldn't be accurate. I'd be overcharging them. So there was some work in that, and you had to be fast. So we talked before about gamification really, really briefly. And so here in the upper, kind of the upper left, performance meters that give you speed and accuracy. And this was a gamification element. You were constantly measured as you did this on your speed and accuracy. You would see these meters going into the red if you were slow. If you made mistakes, meaning you hit the wrong keys, you would see that go slow. So your goal was reach a certain level of speed, reach a certain level of accuracy. That's when you're ready to do the job. And the gamification came from the real thing. Right? This is real gamification. It was the real job. And that's what was so nice about the gamification here, was that it wasn't even gamification. It was simply a realistic simulation game that measured you on the real things you'd be measured in the job. And so it would work nicely as training, and then had potential as an assessment as well. Key elements of this experience is to learn by doing simulation with guidance and feedback. Game-like feel from the meters was really, really valuable. And the challenge aspect was effective. You really wanted to get a good score on speed and accuracy. So you had a challenge with yourself. It didn't have a leaderboard. It wasn't something that was done in those times. That might have worked here, but the key was that you were getting evaluated on the real things that make you a good cashier. You're fast and you're accurate, at least a good cashier. And then there's customer service too, but this was focused on the using the cash register model. The guidance and feedback used AI techniques in that they sort of had an implicit content model of what it meant to be a cashier and a cash register, and were very much in context. So there were some advantages there. And again, a short talk to get into that just a little bit. Do want to show a little bit from a second demo of the same kind, which was a directory assistance training. I'm just going to show you one screen on this, and I'm going to maybe get to more in my time later this afternoon. But this one, you get a call with someone asking you for the phone number for someone, might be a phone number for the Treasure Island grocery store in Wilmette, Illinois. And this was the old days where directory assistance people had to look up listings using a specialized keyboard. And that's what they did using the system. And it had the same kind of model where you would be advised what to do next, but mostly you had to just jump ahead and go. So I might say, now what? It would say you have to go to the loc field. That's somewhere on my keyboard. What does that mean? I'd ask what that means, and it's going to show me where the key is. All right, so that's what it does. It would flash the key for me. All right, so I'll actually go ahead and get through. There's not that much to show, so I'll show this here. It gave me a performance summary at the end. And again, it was another learn by doing activity. So a couple last things for you. We've had analytics, chatbots, recommender system, robots, so much more, and the opportunity for us to do all sorts of things. We have the AI experiences that I've shown. I'd love to be able to get there. I see lots of potential to get there. We just saw these demos in my last talk with the AI coach in Greece, with the AI coach in the store, and all of this is stuff that I'd like to see us do. And it really builds in certain ways on the experiences from a lot of years ago. So these are all experiential learning by doing, and learner control and feedback and all of these things. So I'll leave these up on the screen for just a second. These elements that we saw in the talk earlier, coaching guidance and feedback, realistic performance-based assessment, learner control, and just a very different kind of experience. And there's so much potential for us to do this. So to me, we use AI to create humanizing experiences, let machines do what they do well. Machines are great with memorizing information, help build them more to be helpful, help them to synthesize and provide, using AI techniques, the right education, the right thing at the right time, and to create individualized, engaging learning experiences that are scalable. And it scales up, and we do it right. It can be available to anybody at any time, and that's really, really the goal. All right, so thanks for bearing with me on that, and for 10 minutes kind of walking through some quick things on AI. And with that, there's not time for questions now, but I'll be back for the closing session.